The only other person I can think of that can financially compete with him is Brian Tripp. He joins us.
That's Billion with a B, and that's Brian with a B, and that's all we have in common.
I guess when Jack gets back from Normandy, I think I'll tell him that based on this conversation, there will be no checks picked up by you on the road.
I'm trying to think what else, LeBron. 2 homes in Los Angeles? Nope. $10 million mansion in Akron? Not because I couldn't afford it, just because I don't want to live in Akron.
Ooh. Cold. Very cold. All right. They won the first game, baseball did. Then they scored 4 in the 9th inning to force extra innings in the second game. What did this run through part of the regular season? What did this run to get 3 games in Omaha mean to the program?
Yeah, I think to get there was a major accomplishment. I know we've talked about that before, but then to prove that you belong, doing it against the teams that they did. I thought going into the tournament, Iowa, just because of the depth of their pitching staff, was one of the favorites, and they had played so well down the stretch. And then in that first game, to beat the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, Adam Mazur, and for Matt Wood to hit a 3-run home run being the big shot in that game, and to see Tyler Shingledecker go out and have the start that he did, probably the best start of his Penn State career, probably the best outing of his Penn State career, and for Travis Lunsman to follow it up and get the save and pitch just tremendous, to do that against Iowa. I don't know if they needed any validation for the season that they had, Steve, but it certainly did that. And then for as much as we've talked about Matt Wood and his draft stock, for Shingledecker to do that against the Iowa lineup, the 3rd seed, a team that was 17-7 in the conference this year, a team that still had an outside dream of a regional 135 game, he's a draftable player too. And I think that helped his case, just getting one more signature outing. And then for as much as we've talked about Matt Wood and his draft stock and then Shingledecker, Travis Lunsman has a chance to get drafted this year too. I think Josh Spiegel has an outside chance to get drafted this year too. Rob Cooper and Josh Newman and Sean Moore and Dallas Burke have done a really good job here of developing talent. Penn State had 4 players drafted last year, including their entire starting rotation. And then to come back this year, lose that entire starting rotation and have a better year than they had the year before, and then to go to Omaha and put together a really good showing, upset the 3rd seed, come back and take the number 2 seed, Rutgers, which had an unbelievable year, winning 44 games, and to take them to the brink. And that was the game. I know I talked about it on the broadcast, and I've talked about it before. That was the game. If you get through that game, you only have to win 1 of 2 games to reach the championship. You're in the semifinals. But when you lose that game, it's such a long road back. And I thought they played tough against Iowa. They didn't quit. But Iowa just had more pitching depth in that last game. And even if they had won that, I don't know that, you never say never in sports, but it almost felt like once you drop into that loser's bracket and you have to win 3 in a row just to make the championship, it's almost the inevitable is written on your final tombstone for the 2022 season. But it really, I thought the run they had there proved that they belonged. I don't know if they needed that to prove it, but they played great against some really, really good competition, Iowa and Rutgers, probably 2 of the top by seed and by just the eye test, 2 of the top 3-4 teams in that tournament. So that was really good to see.
Were you surprised Rutgers did not get an NCAA bid?
Yeah, I thought they got completely hosed by not getting a bid to the NCAA. To go in a Power 5 conference, win 44 games, to be the number 1 scoring offense in the entire country. They ranked statistically really high offensively in so many categories. From the eye test, looking at the lineup they had, 1 through 9, there were no weaknesses. They had a great, great season. I think right now, college baseball in general, they use and put too much value on the RPI, and I think that hurt the Big Ten this year. I think what also hurt the Big Ten this year was not playing non-conference games last year, where you didn't have a chance to develop some of your younger players and your younger pitchers to get them that action. And obviously, look, first and foremost, everyone's health and safety is paramount. But in hindsight, maybe having an opportunity in an outdoor sport where there is no contact to get some extra games by playing non-conference last year. I think that set the conference back a little this year. And the thing that I didn't quite understand, and it basically came down to, I think Michigan winning the Big Ten tournament stole Rutgers' bid. If Rutgers, number one, if they win the tournament, they're obviously in as an automatic qualifier. But you had to think it was basically predetermined that the Big Ten was only going to get 2 teams, and they didn't want to give Rutgers a 44-win team in a Power 5 conference and the top-scoring team in the country another bid. But the other thing, for Maryland, not only to be in the tournament, but to be hosting a regional, and then to have the number 2 team that was right there with them atop the standings all year and won 44 games to not even get in, that's a pretty stark contrast there, where your top team could host a regional and the number 2 team is not even in the tournament. I thought that was kind of something that probably needs to be looked at a little bit further as well.
What do you think the state of college baseball is right now across the country?
I think it's strong. You just look at right now, I think a lot of major league teams with their front offices, they're realizing if you're going to draft a college player, there's a lot more known quantity to it than drafting a high school kid, whether it's a really good arm or a shortstop who's excelled at the high school level. But top to bottom, there's a lot of depth. I think there's been a lot of enhancements made to facilities. There's been a lot of investment into analytics and developing players and giving them the resources they need to train at the collegiate level. I think it's really strong. I think across not just the power conferences, but you have conferences in baseball outside of the power conferences that are perennially really, really strong, especially in the South and some of the Midwest. You start going out to California. But I think it's proven for a long time that you can go almost anywhere and have a chance. If you're a good player, they'll find you in any sport. But in baseball, the depth is pretty good right now. So I think college baseball is strong. You just look at the SEC. They're running out there. I don't know if this is a great thing or a bad thing, but they're running out there 6-7 arms a night that are throwing in the mid to upper 90s. It's kind of the way the sport is trending, but also it's nice to see those guys have that in college baseball, and they're doing a good job of getting players pro-ready. It
is exactly what I said verbatim to Kevin Karstetter the other night, because Kevin's going to go to Houston.
Yep.
And I said, it's one thing about baseball. I said, Kevin, baseball is the one sport, no matter what, they have the ability to find you. I mean, all sorts of small colleges, JCs, Major League Baseball, they scout it. They find you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the big thing about college baseball is just finding what's the right spot for you to hone your craft and develop, and getting an opportunity to play. And there's so many guys that'll play at junior college and community college and then go on to finish at a 4 or 5 year school or a Power 5, and they will find you. There's no doubt about that. And some of it with the transfer portal, and some of it's good, and some of it probably is bad, and some of it we probably won't know how good or bad it is for another 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way that college sports are right now. I know you talk about it a lot, and I completely agree with almost everything you say on those topics.
Almost.
Almost.
Let's talk about that for a second. What do you mean almost? Hockey's had some signees. Obviously, that's hockey's a different kind of recruiting. It's it's a different kind of roster makeup. It's older, but how do you think they feel about how things played out in terms of the roster with ice hockey?
Yeah, and I think Guy and his staff has always done a really good job of making sure if they're going to bring someone in, it's going to be that fit piece. That fit piece is going to be right. And they brought in 2 transfers along with their freshman class that they feel like, number one, fit needs they have, but also for all the hard work they did last offseason and last season on and off the ice to get the culture in the locker room to where they want it. After, as guys admitted, during COVID, it was tough. It was tough on him. It was tough on the program. to form those relationships and those bonds. The two guys they brought in, Tur Linden and Ashton Calder, are going to be not only really helpful players on the ice, but two guys that are going to fit in that locker room as well. I think they feel really good about their roster. It's a veteran roster. It's an older team. If you just look at the makeup of the Big Ten compared to Penn State, outside of Notre Dame, there's a lot of younger teams in the conference. I think that will help them. You bring back a lot of key players who now have had the experience. Like, sure, Connor McMenamin and Kevin Wall and Connor McEachran were a part of that 2019-2020 team that won the Big Ten regular season championship. But because that year was cut short from COVID, they didn't have a chance to play in the postseason. They were, quote-unquote, fourth liners. They weren't on special teams units. They weren't on the power play. They weren't out there at the end of the game with 2 minutes left needing to block shots and prevent the other team from scoring with the extra attacker on. They weren't out there on the ice with 5 minutes left down a goal. And to get those reps last season with fans back in the building, I think that will go a long way to now you'll have the experience on the ice to match having that junior or senior designation next to your name going into next season as well.
Yeah, because we were talking today about name, image, and likeness, and Ryan Day made a speech yesterday in Columbus where some odd reason I lost my invitation here. I wouldn't have gone anyway. And he said,
you weren't going to contribute to the $13 million they need?
But that's the number he came up with. Now, I know what the numbers and the goals are with the collective here, because I talked to Mark about it.
Yep.
And I'm not going to reveal what his numbers are, but the goal is to get it up to, safely you can say get it up to 8 figures. Mm-hmm. Well, $13 million for a roster. That's where we are right now. And Zach brought up something interesting early in the show about, what about the other teams? And I said, you got to keep your football, basketball, like in the black.
Yep.
That way, to me, that's where, and then it trickles down to the other teams. And you do a lot of work with baseball, with men's ice hockey, besides being the major domo in football, and what do they think about this? When you talk to the players or to Rob or to Guy, what do they think about collectives with football and basketball and things like that, and about them?
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think you get the sense being around those programs that, and I've done a lot of podcasts and interviews with women's soccer and men's soccer and softball. There's a cognizance of what is happening, but I think those sports, because it is so new and so fresh, and there's so much gray area, that what happens with football as that domino continues to fall, or at least the first couple dominoes continue to fall, is going to be a read and react and a learn what happens from football and men's basketball first. Not that they don't have to discuss it and think about it and try to use it to your advantage and plan for it, but it's on a much smaller scale. And then once the football domino or men's basketball domino starts to fall, then they're going to learn more from that. Like, yes, it is happening in hockey. It's happening in other sports, but not on the scale that it is from the jump in football and men's basketball. So I think, you have to educate yourself and learn about it, and you want to be on the forefront and ahead of the curve. But what's happening in football is at Indy 500 speed. Meanwhile, the rest is kind of at the speed you and I would jog a 5K.
Yeah. I wouldn't include me in that. That'd be going backwards. My friend, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We will see you. I hope I'll see you tonight. I don't know if you're coming over this event or not, but hopefully you'll be there.
may be there. We'll look for you.
Sounds great.
All right.